Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. Today, I'll be sharing my review of Castles and Crusades Codex Exaltum from Trollord Games. This 128-page hardcover carries an MSRP of $29.99. If you want to grab just the PDF alone, you can do so over at DriveThruRPG for $19.99. If you want a combo of both the hardcover and the PDF, that'll run you $39.99. Having said all that, let's swing on over to the other camera because here I've got Codex Exaltum for Castles and Crusades. A couple of things I want to mention before we get stuck in. First of all, my friends over at Trollord Games were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. It's important you know that. We're also not going to take a look at each and every page, but I do want to give you a good feel for what you're going to find inside. First thing we'll do is take a look at the credits page. A lot of folks work very hard to bring this to life, so let's give credit where credit is due. Codex Exaltum is essentially a bestiary filled with celestial entities, angelic entities. And the first 30 pages or so is going to pretty much get into the details about these celestials and how they represent, for the most part, the forces of balance and law within the universe. Now, I get a kick out of the first thing right off the bat is a section detailing how angels are not your friends, because the reality is they're concerned with law and order and balance. They may not necessarily be good characters. In fact, some of these entries within here show neutrality as far as the alignments. And of course, you can have celestials fall as well and turn to evil. So we will get the first 30 or so pages devoted to the traits of celestials and exorcisms and how you can utilize these entries depending on what sort of pantheon of gods you're utilizing. Now, I'm going to be very upfront, very honest here. I am not a big fan of angelic or celestial entities in my fantasy role-playing games. I don't have any issues with devils and demons because I can kind of explain those away regardless of what pantheon I happen to be using. But myself personally, I like to have a diverse range of gods and goddesses and demigods. And in my opinion, and once again, this is simply my opinion, when you use celestials, you're sort of tying your hands as far as the sorts of gods and goddesses that you might have available to you, because angels and celestials sort of lead players to think in terms of a monotheistic sort of setting, as opposed to having a pantheon of different gods. Just saying, I'm not a fan, just not a big fan. I don't utilize them in my fantasy role-playing games. I have absolutely no problems with other people using them in their games. They just don't necessarily make as much sense for me as they might for others. As far as the production quality, very, very solid throughout. Paper stock, very, very nice. We have seen an improvement over the past few years, especially with the Reforged edition, which came out for Castles and Crusades. Really, really solid paper stock. As far as the artwork, I know when I shared my first look video, I got some comments over on YouTube talking about how awful this artwork is and how just this artwork is brutally bad. I don't think so. Now, is it uneven throughout? Sure. Are we seeing images that we've seen in previous Castles and Crusades books, especially in those first 30 pages? Most definitely. But to sit there and say that this artwork is atrociously bad, I think it's kind of ridiculous. kind of uneven, may not necessarily be everyone's cup of tea, but still not terrible. So I just wanted to point that out. This does have a stitched binding, so this will hold up very nicely with repeated use. Something as far as the artwork I should also mention is just about every entry, if not every entry, at least has a piece of art. We can't necessarily say that for every fantasy role-playing bestiary that's out there from other companies too. So this does have that going for it. As far as the entries, they are quite varied. They do kind of range a little bit higher levels because, of course, celestials, many angels and such are going to be high level. And I do understand that is one of the reasons why game masters will utilize these sorts of entities in their fantasy campaigns, because once you get to a high enough level for your player characters, you got to roll out some really high level competition for them and various different high level adversaries to bring the most out of the game. You can't just keep rolling out a bunch of hobgoblins or ogres. So you have to really push the envelope as far as the levels of the adversaries that they're going to face. So I do understand that. I will also point out that it's kind of a mixed bag. I'll give you an example, like hair folk. I don't necessarily know if I would utilize them in my Castles and Crusades campaign. Some of these entries are also a little bit redundant. You are going to find that there are a lot of these entities that feel rather similar. Many of them are winged creatures. They have radiant abilities and such. Now, I'm not trying to tell you that you're not going to get a lot of use out of these creatures. Sure, of course you are. But do want to mention some of them are a little bit redundant. So I got to be honest once again, seeing I'm not necessarily really a big fan of celestials, that does affect my review score for this. So when I give my review score, keep in mind, if you dig these sorts of creatures and NPCs and such, you are going to give this a far higher score than I will. Also, for whatever reason, we do have the return of some of the typos and grammatical errors that has plagued Troll Lord games in the past. It's kind of unfortunate. I thought maybe we're moving away from that, but sadly, it is present. It's not horrible, but it is noticeable. All right, that is a peek inside Castles and Crusades Codex Exaltum from Troll Lord Games. Let's swing on over to the other camera so I can share some final thoughts as well as my review score. Mainly, I'm just not a huge fan of angels and celestials in my fantasy role-playing games. So my review score is going to reflect that. I just want to bring that right up front because those of you out there who love to include these sorts of entities in your fantasy role-playing games are going to dig Codex Exaltum way, way more than I did. Just want to point that out. As far as production quality, physically, excellent book. Once again, really thick paper stock. It is a stitched binding. The book is going to hold up to wear and tear at your game table. Artwork, in my opinion, is not as bad as some people have made it out to be. Sure, it's uneven. But when you have spent as many decades as I have reading through role-playing game books, this artwork is not terrible by any stretch. I have seen some artwork throughout game books that was shockingly bad. And yes, I'm looking at you, first edition of Outbreak Undead. You want to talk terrible artwork? Give that a peek sometime. Then again, if you want to keep your sanity, maybe you shouldn't. Anyway, all in all, this is a solid book. It really, really is. It's just angels and celestials are not my bag of tricks. So on a scale of 0 to 10, I give Castles and Crusades Codex Exaltum a 6.5 out of 10. Once again, your mileage will certainly vary you might find an additional point or two added to the review score, depending on how you feel about angels and celestials in your games. All right, that is it for this time out. If you enjoy the Gaming Gang and would like to support the outlet, you can do so in a few ways. First, by utilizing our affiliate links to the One Bookshelf sites, such as DriveThruRPG, and to do so, simply visit thegaminggang.com, click on one of our banners. That way, if you happen to make a purchase, I get 5% of that sale. You can also make a one-time donation by way of PayPal or become a monthly member of our Patreon. You'll find links to all of this in the show notes. Also in the show notes, you're going to find an invite link to our Discord server. Absolutely free to sign up, so be sure to hang with the gang over on Discord. Of course, if you like the video, by all means, give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already, and if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell. And if you ring the bell, be sure to select all notifications, because that way you'll find out whenever I share videos such as this review, as well as be notified when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central, as I bring you the latest in tabletop role-playing game news. And of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are not going to find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Thank you very much for watching. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer, and until I see you next time, I certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.